I'm Steve, and I need to tell you something about Louisiana that most travel content completely avoids. This is a state that is losing a football field of land to the Gulf of Mexico every 100 minutes, around the clock, not slowing down. A state where a section of highway called Cancer Alley has some of the highest cancer rates in the entire United States. A stretch of petrochemical plants running along the Mississippi River, so dense that communities downwind of them have been documented with cancer rates multiple times the national average. Where the ground opened up one morning in 2012 and swallowed an entire bayou and kept growing for years. And where the Mississippi River, one of the most powerful rivers in the world, is being held in its current course by human engineering alone, against its own geological will. Louisiana is not just jazz and gumbo. It is one of the most geologically unstable, environmentally compromised, and climatically threatened places in the United States. And the story of what is happening here is one of the most important geography stories in America right now. Let's get into it. Start with the ground. Southern Louisiana is not like the ground in the rest of the country. It is not solid. The entire coastal region was built by the Mississippi River over thousands of years, depositing sediment layer by layer at its mouth to create the delta and the coastal wetlands surrounding it. That sediment is not rock. It is loose, organic, compressible material, and it is sinking under its own weight. Louisiana has the fastest rate of land subsidence in North America, with some coastal areas dropping by more than a centimeter per year. When you combine that sinking ground with rising sea levels, the math produces a trajectory that is already reshaping the state's coastline at a speed that is visible within a single human lifetime. The numbers are extraordinary. Louisiana has lost over 2,000 square miles of coastal land since the 1930s, an area roughly the size of Delaware, simply gone. The land does not erode dramatically in a single event. It drowns. The ground sinks below the waterline. The marsh grasses that hold the soil together lose their footing. The Gulf moves in. And another piece of Louisiana that existed on the map a generation ago no longer exists at all. The reason this process has accelerated so dramatically is the same reason the Mississippi River built the delta in the first place: sediment. For thousands of years, the river flooded annually and deposited fresh sediment across the delta, replenishing what was sinking. The levee system built throughout the 20th century to protect communities from flooding also stopped those annual floods and stopped the sediment delivery. The delta is now sinking without being replenished. It is a geological budget running at a permanent deficit. Ile de Jean Charles in Terrebonne Parish is a place that most Americans have never heard of, and it tells this story in miniature. In 1955, the island was approximately 22,000 acres of land. By the time the federal government formally designated it the first American community to receive relocation funding due to climate change in 2016, it had shrunk to approximately 320 acres. A community that had been inhabited for generations by Native American and Cajun families watched their land dissolve around them over the course of a single lifetime. The residents were not being dramatic. Their island was literally disappearing beneath them. Before we go further, drop a comment right now telling me if you live in Louisiana or if this is information you have never come across before. I read every single one, and your responses shape what this channel covers next. The Mississippi River does not want to be where it is. That is not a metaphor. The river has been trying to change its primary channel for decades, diverting its flow into the Atchafalaya River, which offers a shorter, steeper path to the Gulf of Mexico. Rivers naturally migrate over time, finding the most efficient route to the ocean. The Mississippi has been building pressure against the old river control structure, a massive engineering project built in the 1960s specifically to prevent the diversion for over 60 years. The Army Corps of Engineers estimates that the control structure diverts approximately 30% of the Mississippi's flow into the Atchafalaya. Hydrologists have long warned that if the structure were ever overwhelmed by a major flood event, the diversion would happen catastrophically and irreversibly. New Orleans and Baton Rouge, which depend on the Mississippi for their water supply and their port access, would be left on a backwater channel. The river is not accepting the engineering solution permanently. It is waiting. Then there is Cancer Alley. The 85-mile stretch of the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans is home to over 150 petrochemical plants, refineries, chemical manufacturers, and plastics producers concentrated along the riverbank in a density found nowhere else in the United States. The communities living in and around this corridor, which are disproportionately low income and predominantly African American, have documented cancer rates and respiratory disease rates significantly above state and national averages. The area around St. James Parish has been the subject of ongoing legal battles over air quality and environmental justice. A Formosa Plastics complex proposed for the area was blocked by federal courts in 2021, partly on environmental justice grounds. The industrial infrastructure that makes Louisiana one of the most important petrochemical states in the country is sitting in the backyards of communities that bear a health cost that rarely appears in the economic statistics. In August 2012, residents near Bayou Corn in Assumption Parish began noticing something disturbing. The ground was shaking. Gas was bubbling up through the water. Trees near the bayou were tilting and then disappearing underground. What had happened was that an underground salt dome cavity, used by a Texas brine company for industrial storage, had collapsed without warning, creating a sinkhole that ultimately grew to over 750 feet wide with an unknown depth. The sinkhole swallowed trees, bayou water, and everything around it as it expanded. Residents of the nearby community were evacuated. The sinkhole is still there. It is still slowly growing. The salt dome geology that underlies much of southern Louisiana and is used extensively for industrial storage, including petroleum reserves, collapsed in Assumption Parish without warning and without being fully understood afterward. Similar formations exist across the region. I personally think the story of Hurricane Katrina and the levee failures is one of the most important infrastructure stories in American history, and it is still not fully understood by most people who lived through it. When Katrina made landfall in August 2005, the storm itself was significant but survivable. What turned it into a catastrophe was the failure of the levee system protecting New Orleans, a system that the Army Corps of Engineers had designed, built, and was responsible for maintaining. The levees failed not because the storm exceeded their design parameters in most cases, but because of engineering deficiencies and inadequate construction. New Orleans sits in a bowl below sea level in many of its neighborhoods, surrounded by Lake Pontchartrain to the north and the Mississippi River to the south, protected from both by engineered structures. When those structures failed, the bowl filled. Over 1,800 people died. The city flooded to depths of 20 feet in some neighborhoods. Entire communities were destroyed and never rebuilt. The population of New Orleans has still not recovered to its pre-Katrina level. The Atchafalaya Basin in south-central Louisiana is the largest river swamp in the United States. Over 800,000 acres of bottomland hardwood forest, cypress swamp, bayous, and backwater lakes covering a landscape that is simultaneously one of the most biologically rich freshwater ecosystems in North America and one of the most disorienting places a person can enter. People get lost in the Atchafalaya, not figuratively. The channels shift seasonally. Landmarks disappear when water levels change, and the geography that existed during a previous visit may not exist in the same form the next time. Bodies have been found in the Atchafalaya months or years after disappearances because the basin is so vast and so complex that comprehensive searches are essentially impossible. It is the kind of wilderness that the rest of the lower 48 mostly does not have anymore. Genuinely hostile to human navigation, genuinely indifferent to human plans. Louisiana has the highest rate of incarceration of any state in the United States, and by some measures, the highest rate of any country in the world. The prison system is deeply intertwined with the state's history of forced labor, racial inequality, and economic underdevelopment in ways that researchers and journalists have documented extensively. Angola, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, sits on the site of a former plantation, still uses that name, and is still one of the largest prisons in the country. The geography of imprisonment in Louisiana is inseparable from the geography of everything else happening here. This is what stays with me about Louisiana. It is a state where the ground is disappearing, the river wants to change course, the industrial corridor is making people sick, the sinkhole is still growing, and the hurricane levees that failed once have been rebuilt with the knowledge that the next major storm is a matter of when, not if. And yet, people stay. The culture, the food, the music, the community, the things that make Louisiana, Louisiana, exist in a landscape that is actively threatening to take them back. Louisiana is not declining. It is fighting. It has always been fighting. The water, the petrochemicals, the geology, and the climate are all on one side. The people are on the other. That is the truest thing I can tell you about this state. Louisiana deserved more than a quick overview, and we hope this episode did it justice. If something here changed how you see this state, we want to know which fact it was. Drop it in the comments. We genuinely read every single one, and your responses shape what we make next on this channel. If you are not subscribed yet, this is the kind of content we put out every week. Real geography, real consequences, real stories that most channels skip over. Subscribe to Wild States Facts and come back next week. See you then.